back to full force now. So let's see. I think
Yeah,
yesterday's...
you were saying?
I said yesterday's little speech by the president is obviously a step in the right direction for us.
True.
So let's just get it all done now.
100%, 100%. We're all hoping to see some progress with regard into the reopening because I mean it's been hectic. Everything was shut down, and I don't think that is fair actually for also other people who are like working. Okay, so we have other people already attending here. Hi guys, and welcome. I think we're going to get more people joining us. Let us know where you guys are watching from. I'm with Shawn today here, and he's going to be telling you about some interesting technology that they're having at Highspeed, and obviously some of the interesting opportunities that they have there for investors too. We're going to be talking about a lot of other interesting things about what's happening in the market today. And thanks for joining us on time. You guys don't use African time, but we do have people who use African time, so we're expecting them to pop up as we go forward. However, I think we're going to be starting in a few more minutes. We also have a few people watching from YouTube. That's good. And yeah, thanks to everybody who's joining us today. And yeah, we're going to try to make sure that you guys find these sessions, as we always do, are very valuable. I try every week to bring you guys, guest experts on real estate and also finance, and also just to keep you guys updated on the market and what's going on. And yeah, so I think we're just going to be starting in a few more minutes. I think we can actually just, let's just see if we can. Just send us a message in the chat box and let us know where you guys are watching from, so we can welcome you directly. And we're also going to be testing if the chat box is working. And then also, I mean, it's always good to have an interactive webinar when we do one of these, because now we're under lockdown or alert level, whatever, at this point. But it seems like we cannot be interactive as we want to be. So we try to make the sessions as intimate and interactive as possible. So thank you guys for joining us. So let us know where you guys are watching from, and obviously what you're ready to hear about today, so we can just welcome you. So yeah, just let us know in the chat box where you guys are watching from. And yeah, it's always good to have an interactive webinar, and that's what we do all the time. So let us know where you guys are watching from in the chat box. We're looking forward to always keep adding as much value as we can today. Yeah, and we're going to be starting in a few more minutes. Just think that it's always good to wait for people who are going to be starting off, who are coming on African time. Okay, somebody just raising their hand. Who is that? I saw somebody raising their hand there. Okay, no, not a problem. Then I guess more people will join us as we go. Okay, so guys, just let us know where you're watching from, and we will welcome you as we go. And thank you very much for joining us. Our chat webinar was disabled. Okay, I see we had this problem last week. So chat is disabled. Okay, no problem. So I think we can use the Q&A box. So that shouldn't be a problem. The Q&A box can work very well. I think we had this problem last week and they taught me how to do it. I think, they will also come and fix it for me. So sorry about that, but we can use the Q&A box for that. And thank you, Monde, who's watching from Rodeport. Welcome. And we hope that we're going to try to make this session as much as we can valuable for you. And as you can see, Shawn is welcoming you guys, and other guys. You can also let us know in the Q&A box, rather. Seems like our chat box is not working again today. So I'm going to be sorting that out. I don't know. I thought I sorted it out already. So this Zoom thing is getting advanced, and I can't keep up. So yeah, thanks you guys for joining us today, and everybody else who's joining us also can let us know where they're watching from, and I'll also be checking quickly on YouTube. And I'm just going to go through a few house rules before we get started, and so we can start all on the same page. Okay, so a few things that I want you guys to note is that since our chat box is not working again today, we will have to use our Q&A box for any questions that we have, and also it's much better and always makes for a good interactive webinar when you guys let us know where you're watching from, especially when you're asking a question, and then so we can be able to address your question directly. And then we're going to open up the Q&A at the end for any questions that you guys have. about anything that we touched on in here, or anything else that you want to know about, Shawn or myself, or anything else, then you're going to be opening up the question for Q&A also, so you guys can be able to take advantage of that. And then the second thing is, if you haven't already gotten our ebook, I just sent it here. A lot of people send me a lot of emails about the ebook. Thousands of investors, aspiring and existing investors, that downloaded the ebook. So I'd recommend you guys to have a look at it. And I'm also going to be sending you guys some gifts that Shawn has given me, a few past streams on the webinar, and also the app that they have on Highspeed. We're going to be getting to know all about it today. So you can, you guys can be able to get engaged and be able to keep updated with the auctions and what's going on there. And also, if you have any questions also, and you're just joining us right now, just also, we're going to be using our Q&A box. Let us know where you're watching from. It always makes for a good interactive webinar. And last but not least, I think that is it for today. If you're joining for the first time also, just let us know so we can welcome you directly, because we try to make this sessions as interactive as possible. Because of the lockdown and everything else, we can't just, strictly just run into the business without actually just checking on how you guys are doing. So I hope everybody's doing well. And then if there's anything else I left out behind, just let us know. All the ebooks and everything else that we have, just check it in the Q&A box. And it looks like our chat box is not working for today. Technical issues, you can't hear me, you can't hear Shawn. Also let us know in the Q&A box so we can get that fixed out for you. Otherwise, I'm going to be starting the webinar today. So my guest today is Shawn. Shawn is a sales executive at Highspeed, and you're also an on-site auctioneer. You started your career at Highspeed back in 2015. You've been working in the commercial, industrial, and retail and residential sector for the past 5 years. And then Highspeed Auction Company was established decades of experience in property, investment, and development, finance, auction industries that came together with the formation of a company of industry experts. The collective experience and proven track records, and these unique individuals have provided a synergy to create a formidable property auction business with exceptional pedigree, which we all know about, that Highspeed is one of the best auctioning companies out there. And it was established as a marketplace for the sale and purchase of property in South Africa. They specialize in commercial, industrial, retail, and residential properties. And the auction route is to market has proven itself to be the most beneficial, reliable, and fastest ways of selling and buying properties. And Highspeed has been established to serve as South Africa's marketplace as the leading auction house through comprehensive market knowledge and research, and its seasoned property professionals and impressive market research and its world-class auction events. Shawn, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Ezra. Happy to be here.
100%. So I like to start my sessions by, before we go into the technical talk about today, I like to get to know a little bit more about you. So who was Shawn before Highspeed, and how did you get involved in this auction industry and Highspeed specifically?
It's actually quite an interesting story. So, the auction profession is one of the oldest professions out there. This dates back 2,500 years ago already. And I was never really interested in becoming an auctioneer per se. It wasn't a career path that I was forging out for myself. I was very fortunate to have been able to go and travel across the world via cruise ships about 10 years ago. And whilst working on cruise ships, I realized that they had an art auction department on board the cruise ships, selling original Dalis and Picassos and Rembrandts. And that's really where I segued my career into that of an auctioneer. Worked on cruise ships for several years, came back to South Africa, because, that novelty did wear off a little bit. And upon coming to South Africa, I realized that, I do want to get into real estate. And I was looking at a couple of different auction companies, but then eventually ended up with a Highspeed auction company, because from my side and from the due diligence that I did from my side, it was definitely the best company to partner with. Took a while to get in there, but once we got in there, we're all good now.
100%. I mean, you can imagine, the Highspeed is one of the best auction companies out here. And I'm also thinking about, to keep the best, you must also be doing, the best teams and the best people that you have in there. So what are some of the struggles, that you had when you're starting out on this journey, working with Highspeed, and, how did you get over those issues? Because we all have to go through all these hurdles when you're starting out in a new career?
It was challenging. You know, a lot of people sometimes when they see what we do, they think what we do is very easy and it's something that anyone can do, but it's not quite. You know, as with any career opportunity, there's going to be hurdles, there's going to be learning curves. And, you know, it took me a fair amount of time to obviously grasp the property aspect of auction business. But luckily for me, I had the know-how of the auction industry beforehand. So that did help me to segue into property auctions a little bit easier. But also, again, you know, with commercial industrial properties, there's quite a bit that one needs to study there to understand those markets. You can't just say that you're a commercial property broker. You know, it takes a little bit of know-how on how to look at a property and how to be able to assess a property and see what the pitfalls might be on that property when you do want to try to sell it. But you know, with High Street, you know, it's also the directors within the High Street Auction Company that has laid the foundation to train us up and to mold us into the executives that we are currently.
100%, because I mean, property is a multifaceted industry, you know, especially when you're dealing with all the sectors from industrial, you know, retail and all the other things, not only residential. So I can imagine that's a lot of learning, that's a lot of, you know, investing in yourself and really understanding different models. And it's going to take a lot of training, you know, having the people, as you said, around you, like the directors there to help you, you know, point you in the right direction. So one of the things that I wanted us to discuss today was the current state of the real estate market based on, you know, the COVID-19 and the impact it had on the market today. So I'm also, you know, tying that with what are you guys seeing in terms of portfolio disposals from, you know, people who might have been over leveraged or just, you know, real stock of real estate coming on the market. What is your view on what is going on the market and obviously the portfolio disposal that are coming in on your side so far?
Look, I definitely think there is going to be a bit of a market shift. We've realized it very quickly. One example, for instance, is, you know, if you speak to any real estate agent in the market today and you ask them how easy or difficult it is to sell a property in Bella Bella, for instance, that might be at Zabula Game Lodge. You know, those are typically challenging property sales, you know, and it takes a long time to actually sell those. But in the last two virtual auctions that we did, the first one, which was on the 14th of May, and the last one that just passed now on the 9th of June, we actually had two properties, one in Bella Bella and one in Kruger National Park. And both those properties actually attracted international buyers, one from the US and one from the UK, that actually end up buying those properties. So I think we are definitely going to see a bit of a shift in what asset classes will be performing better than others. I think interesting to note is it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with office buildings. You know, especially now with COVID, a lot of corporations have now realized that, you know, now that we have our team working from home, and I'm sure the High Street Auction Company's directors will agree to this too, you actually find that your employees is more productive because they don't have the frustration of sitting in traffic. They can actually work a little bit more and a little bit longer. And I think there is going to be a shift in a lot of corporates that's going to take a look at their commercial space that they are currently leasing or occupying. And I think they too will be looking at possibly reducing that and start moving into smaller industries. But on that note, you know, something in South Africa that's always been a strong market is retail. You know, people in South Africa love retail, especially if there's a good tenant in there with a long lease. You know, that's investors love that. And there's a property that we took to market in March, the day before lockdown. It's actually a super spa in Vicksburg, down on the border of Lesotho and Free State. And in actual fact, you know, the first campaign that we ran on that property, we had a fair amount of interest in it. We had 4 registered buyers across from South Africa participating in the auction for that property. But unfortunately, there was a default purchaser. He didn't perform, so we re-auctioned the property. But now we are looking at getting a corporate lease from SPA, which will all obviously strengthen that property. And again, now we're starting to find that we're getting international buyers that are interested in coming back into South Africa and investing in South Africa. So, you know, even though Moody's downgraded us just a few months ago, you won't say that. You know, I think we can see a lot of international buyers that has appetite to move into South Africa because it's inexpensive to borrow money at the moment in South Africa. You know,
100%, 100%. That's also something I was about to say. I thought the sentiment of buyers internationally was going to be changing because of the downgrade and because of our current economy and what we're experiencing right now with the COVID. Because our economy was already on a slowdown, and the economy, like the COVID-19, made things a little bit worse. So when I was watching the recent episodes on Highspeed, I was seeing a lot of international buyers, having interest there, and we're just wondering. Also, reading a few articles last week, that we're seeing a lot of surge of international buyers coming in. So it's very, very interesting to see that happening. And I'm just wondering, maybe it's because of the, as you said, the borrowing rate is a little bit cheaper, but I'm also thinking that they want to be taking advantage of all the other opportunities and investment opportunities that are here in the market and seeing what's going on. So if somebody was wondering also, is it the right time to invest, you can already see from that it is the right time to invest, and actually always is the right time to invest. Otherwise, I wanted to say that COVID-19, as you've seen, has caused all of us to think outside the box and how we do business on a daily basis. You just mentioned now that we all have to work from home. Some people are transitioning. Some people are already doing that for a very long time. And the good part about it is that all of us are now having the opportunity to become more creative. We have to find new ways to do this, new ways to do that, and explore some avenues we never explored before. Like I've been talking to guys who are now in prop tech. We're seeing a lot of rise in prop tech in South Africa, from the whole value chain of property, from buying to selling to management, to all the admin work that you have to do on the property, to actually the maintenance guys. I saw there's a new bot that they use called Todd board, where you just have to tap in and find somebody who can be able to fix up your property for yourself. So the whole value chain in property right now is getting disrupted, and it's a very, very interesting game. And I think that is some of the creativity that is coming out right now as technology is forced to us due to the COVID-19 situation. So one of the ways that I'm seeing you guys at Highspeed thinking outside the box is with this virtual auction studio that you're setting up right now, which is something I want you to tell us a little bit more. But for those who don't know what it is about, it's just like full-size, dedicated live stream, studio, on a scale to like those major television networks. I'll be sending you guys, all everybody who attended, some videos that you can be able to see that. And those news and sports broadcasts is like one of those big ones. And what you guys are doing here is integrating a variety of real-time bidding software options for clients, including mobile app that I'm going to also be sending it to the attendees today, and Zoom. And apparently it's the first of its kind in the world that has been developed for permanent use by private auctioneers, which is very interesting. So we're seeing you guys also thinking outside the box. Some of the people who can and some businesses who can't think outside the box right now are going to be going out of the business. So can you tell us a little bit more about this virtual studio that is the first of its kind, and obviously your experience working with it, and how the other investors who are regular investors and just investors working with Highspeed are experiencing this experience that you guys are doing? Because this at this point is at a test stage I should say, and we are still trying to figure out how things are going to be, how people are going to be reacting to it, the way I see it.
So Ezra, just to explain to your audience that's listening to us, with the Highspeed Auction Company, we obviously have and to paint the picture a little bit, pre-COVID, the Highspeed Auction Company would host monthly auctions, so once a month, a multiple property auction, which will have anywhere between 30, maybe up to 50 properties in it. And we traditionally used to use the venue Summer Place in Hyde Park to host these events. And that's your typical auction scenario. You've got a location where you're going to do the auction. We don't do on-site auctions for residential. We used to, but we're also moving away from it. But typically what we then do is have between 30 and 40 properties up on auction, hosted at the Summer Place, and bring all of our buyers and sellers all together on that one single platform. Now, though we are now going and we've launched our virtual auction studio, and we are still going to be working out some of the kinks in it, but this is really a strategy that we've been working on for many years already. The Highspeed Auction Company actually, when I started with them back in 2015, we actually did a simulcast auction whereby there was a property in Botswana that we took to auction. It was an old ex-Cadbury factory. And for that auction, that's where it all started really for us. We had the auctioneer and the auction venue here in Summer Place in Johannesburg, but then we also sent a team up to Botswana to obviously have the local buyers from Botswana participate, but they were actually looking at the live stream auction and placing their bids to the auctioneer here in Johannesburg.
Okay.
And that was the first one for us. That obviously then translated into us looking at getting our national footprint. Now we've got offices in KwaZulu-Natal as well as in Cape Town. And over the last 2 or 3 years, we've done a couple of auctions whereby, again, the auction was taking place at Summer Place in Johannesburg, but we also had a secondary venue in Cape Town whereby we could actually then get buyers and sellers at the Cape Town venue as well here in Johannesburg. And we, again, simulcast that auction between Cape Town and Johannesburg. We've always had the interest of moving our business online. And especially with the app, you know, we got our hands on the app, I think it's a little over a year ago already, maybe even like close to 1.5 years. And we were looking at launching that app here in South Africa, and we knew that that was going to take probably a 2 to a 3 year period for your local South Africans to adapt to that mentality of buying properties on an app or online. But obviously with the current situations that we have now, it really just basically launched us into this virtual auction studio. Now, obviously to the attendees listening, I can't divulge too much information on the technology we're using and what we're doing, because that is our intellectual property and we would like to keep it to ourselves and let the other guys catch up to us. But it really is, as you said, Ezra, it's like a CNN studio, you know. We've got our auctions, the last ones on our YouTube channel, the Highspeed Auction Company. And you'll see on the 9th of July auction, we had our one director and auctioneer from Cape Town that's in charge of our movable side. We had him in Cape Town, the auctioneer up here in Johannesburg at our studio, and we were able to bring both of them behind that desk. And it was a little bit interesting for the auctioneer to do it, but this was just to test it, to show the capabilities. Obviously, if you look at the 9th of July's auction highlight, that is going to get better and better as we go along, because we're now going to look at what's the right bandwidth that we need to use, different cameras, etc., etc. But yeah, very interesting.
100%, 100%. And is this something that you guys are looking to keep for a long time, permanently? And what is the experience for investors using this auction in comparison to, you know, come into the venues every month so far?
Good question, actually, to ask that. For us, you know, as I said, you know, 2-3 years ago, we were already starting with this game plan on going digital. And, you know, it was like a 5-year plan for us with a lot of marketing money that we would have needed to spend to launch the app and to educate the market and to get the market and the consumers to change their behavior from having to want to be in front of the property when you do the auction to actually now diverting them to go to the online platform. Before COVID-19, there were some folks that were keen on jumping on the app, but they still wanted to be a bit more in control, and they weren't really fully 100% sold on it. But obviously, because of the current situation, everyone was forced there. And guess what? The consumers are buying into it. You know, this last auction that we had, I think we had 34 properties across South Africa, again, international buyers that bought lodges from us just on the virtual tour, not even seeing the property. There was actually a study that was done by Realtor.com in the US, and they actually did a broad study on consumers' behavior in this. It was released about 2 weeks ago. And apparently, before the study was done, the consumers weren't prepared to transact on a property transaction virtually. Because you know, you kind of want to see it and feel it and see it for yourself, really, you know, especially if we're talking about millions of rands. But now they say 2 out of 5 people are prepared and willing to actually do it. And we saw that in South Africa as well. And I think we actually increased our buying pool because not everyone can always afford to come through to Johannesburg where our venues are. So by doing it this way, you know, we can now do multiple auctions, not just one a month. We can possibly even do twice a month. But we have seen that consumers are prepared to transact on those platforms. So this definitely will be moving forward. It's going to become our new norm. I think we will probably still do some auctions at Summer Place. And obviously, I'm speaking out of turn here. The directors from the Highspeed Auction Company will make that call. But I think from what we've seen just on the last 2 virtual auctions that we've done, consumers are there. They're ready for this. You know, we've been prepping to go digital for so many years, but everyone is just now forced to say, listen, demystify all those myths. South Africa as well, we are ready to transact online, and we see it now. You know, all the moms and pop shops that used to be offline and brick and mortar, everyone's pushing to go online now because that's where the consumers are. You know,
100%, 100%. And then one of the things I also wanted to say is that this might also be an incredible opportunity for people to learn a little bit more about auction and how it works, because most of the people, either entry level or seasoned investors, might not have been taking advantage of how, you know, auctioning properties other than alternative method of buying and selling because of lack of knowledge, actually, most of the time. So right now, if I can find the stream on YouTube and you hear Geoff saying, "Oh," like, okay, I'm seeing the next time again, I already know how it works, you know, instead of, you know, if somebody else who was like waiting to go for an auction at the venue and they couldn't afford to get to the venue, now I can just watch it on Facebook. I can just watch it on YouTube, and next time I understand how it works, and now I can be one of the participants who's like, you know, understanding how auction works. So I think that you're going to also be seeing more investors considering the auction route as one of the fastest way of selling properties. So the question that I have actually I wanted to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit more for people who don't understand, you know, how auctioning works and why is it a better alternative for buying and selling properties in comparison to, you know, the other alternative ways that are there, and why should investors take advantage of that route actually, because for those who are not taking advantage of it already?
You see, the auction route, especially for investors, it's something to consider, because as an investor, if you go the auction route for buying properties, you as the investor are on the driving seat. Now, we obviously always recommend that you do your due diligence on that property before it goes onto auction, so that you can inspect it yourself. If there are leases in place or rental income, scrutinize it, make sure you're happy with it, do your numbers, crunch your numbers. But you as an investor are then in the driving seat of what you want to pay for that property or what you are prepared to pay for that property. And by bringing that number to the table, you then have an opportunity to transact at the levels that you are comfortable to transact at.
I definitely understand.
And then for sellers, obviously, you know, the auction route is a quick and a fast and effective way to sell your property. You know, obviously for sellers, if they are looking at selling their property through an auction company, just some of my recommendations would be do your due diligence on the auction company. Make sure that they are registered with the South African Institute of Auctioneers, SIA, to make sure that those auction companies do comply with the rules and regulations. And then do your due diligence, you know, and then once you are ready, submit your property to that auction company. Any auction company will obviously do their assessment and proposal and present those to you. And then if you're happy to it, it gives you the quickest and the cleanest way of doing a successful property transaction.
100%, 100%, 100%. So I just wanted to say that, you know, some of the Highspeed is one of the leading, you know, auctioning companies right now. And you guys are holding records on a lot of things. One of the interesting one that I saw actually when I was driving in Sandton, I think by the end of last year, was the largest multiple auction for 1.2 billion rand. And also I just saw recently that you guys also saw the Kyle rest trade on your auctions too. So can you tell us a little bit more about what actually takes to put such a big multiple auction together? And you mentioned that earlier on that you guys already sold like 60% of that portfolio. So how does it take, what does it take to do that? And also what type of buyers are you guys seeing who are, you know, interested in this? Because I saw that there was a lot of shopping centers, a little bit of that and mixed other properties that were, you know, on that auction for the multiple auction that you guys had last year. Yeah.
Yeah, look, you know, as you say, some of our accolades that we're very proud of is it started with the Kyalami racetrack that we sold back in 2014. And, you know, it brings up an interesting question, you know, like if you take a look at, let's talk about the Mona Lisa, okay, Leonardo da Vinci's painting. If you ask art historians, how much is that worth? They will all tell you that it's priceless. You know, this is a piece of art, a relic from the 1600s. You know, you can't attach a price to it. Well, actually you can. If you want to determine a price or a value on an item, put it up for auction. Especially an item that you're going to have so many mixed reviews on what the value is, put it up for auction and the market will dictate what the value for that item is. And that really worked with Kyalami Racetrack as well. It's such an interesting property. I don't think your regular transactions of the real estate agents would have been able to bring qualified buyers for something of that magnitude to the table. But going the auction route has proved to be successful. And look, don't get me wrong, we did a massive marketing campaign on that property, but we only found the buyer like a couple of days before the auction. It was outside the box thinking, like everyone at the high street does. Leading up to that auction, they were all sitting and they didn't really have a clear buyer yet. And then it was time to start thinking outside the box, and that's when they came up with the idea, let's contact a couple of car manufacturers and see if they might be interested. And that's how they got to Toby Venter from Porsche, and it made sense for him to buy that, and look at what an incredible business he's creating out of that one now. So to set up a multiple property auction platform, it takes many years of experience. You've got to have the right stock. As you said, that 1.2 billion rand portfolio disposal that we did in November 2018, that was the most amount of stock that we ever took to auction in one sitting. I think it was close to about 55 or 60 properties we had up for auction. But again, as auctioneers, we cater for everyone, and we can take any property to auction, whether it's agricultural land, development land, retail centers, hotel accommodation, student accommodation, retail always strong, and industrial as well.
100%. So let's say somebody is watching this now and thinking, look, I want to be, I don't want to go to the estate agent routes. I want to be dealing with property investment and developments through auctioning. So can you tell us a little bit more about what are the things that you really like about what you do, and some of the things that they might find challenging if they take these routes that you're also taking right now?
The thing about going the auction route, and it all starts with a conversation. So if there are any of the attendees on here that's maybe considering disposing of one or two of their assets, and they have been trying the traditional routes and it hasn't been successful for them, then looking at the auction route definitely is an option. What we will do from our side is, once we get the property information, we will then take a look at it and make sure that we've got all the necessary information that we need in order to do an auction proposal or an assessment on that asset. That assessment that we're going to do is going to be free of charge. There's no obligation to it. And through that assessment, we are going to determine a more or less of where we think the market might react on that property. So if someone says, listen, I've got a retail center with a 10-year lease on it, it's generating X amount of income and it's in this area, we will take a look at all of it and we'll just generate a proposal based on that asset and the marketing expenses that's going to be included in taking that property to auction. So from a seller's point of view, the only things that they need to consider and keep in mind by going the auction route is, A, we will require an exclusive mandate to be signed over to us in order to effectively market the property for you. You will probably have to contribute towards the marketing expenses, because it is going to cost us some money to market that property and generate enough interest in the market to let them know that that property is going to go to auction. But also for the sellers, as a little bit of peace of mind, just to let you guys know, is the reserve price on the property. All properties we take to auction will have a reserve price on it. And we never disclose those reserve prices to the buyers because it will be unfair to the market. But you as a seller will be protected by that reserve price. So Ezra, if you ask me to take this pen to auction for you and you say, Shawn, I want 10 Rand for the pen, we'll attach a mandate price of 10 Rand to the pen. We take it to auction. If the offer at auction is less than 10 Rand, that offer cannot be considered unless you as the seller are willing to consider that offer. But anything less than the mandate price, we cannot transact. So you've got that sort of buffer and safety net as a seller, really.
100%. So 2 questions, and then we're going to be opening up for the Q&A. And the first one is, do you have any successful tips for successful auctioning for property investors? Because most of our audience is property investors. Basically because, I mean, I know they need to do some research before the auction. And then obviously, even that day, some of the things that they need to do is leave the ego at home. And then obviously after the auction too, they can still find some of the deals that you guys didn't manage to sell. I usually buy properties before the auction or after the auction. I've never did any transaction directly in the auction tight day, but I wanted to figure out, if you have any tips for, investors who are looking to, start this auction and look for investment opportunities through auctioning in 2020.
Look, again, as I said, the auction route for an investor, for your investors listening to this, the auction route puts you in the driving seat as the buyer. So, you're going to go and have a look at the property. You're going to determine what value you want to attach to that property. And as you said, try to leave that ego at home, because you do sometimes get caught up in the action. And funny enough, we actually thought that going the virtual way of doing an auction, we're not going to have the audience in front of us, that big crowd. So as an auctioneer and the entire team of the auction staff, we thought that we were not going to be as successful going virtually. But actually, it was the opposite that took place. Even virtually, we thought that, these guys, they're not going to be as aggro in their bidding on these properties as what we normally see them doing it in person. But even online and virtually, it's still there. So I think we can try to advise the buyers to leave the ego at home, but I think at the end of the day, it's still going to come out,
100%, 100%, because that's something I always pick up at auctions is, you get this ego coming in the room, and that's why I don't even encourage a lot of buying through the auction. I'd rather do it before or after, if there's anything left, unless if you find it at a good price that you're looking for and you run your numbers before and you did your research, then it's much better to obviously join in on that, especially at the point. So I think that was my last question. Can you tell us a little bit more about the app and obviously your next dates that you guys are going to be having on auctions? I'm going to also be sending guys everything that you send me through. I think there's a few gifts there, the app, also the videos that are about the previous auctions, so they can be able to catch up on. But I also wanted to let to let the audience know a bit about the app, what they must be expecting from it. Obviously, the investor packs that you guys have, and some of the things that they need to know, if there's anything else. And you can also share your last words for the interview today.
Perfect, will do. Regarding the app, our auctioneer, Joff, and I hope he doesn't listen to this because I'm going to give him even a bigger head if he is. Joff and Renan really is arguably the best auctioneer in South Africa. You speak to anyone in the business, I think that they're going to concur with that. And even the international auctioneers, we're very close friends with the National Auctioneer Association in America, and Tim Mars, who's the director of that, they're very good friends and close friends with Joff, because Joff did his trading through them. The app that we have is something that we are very proud of. It's a very comprehensive app, and it's really this app that has allowed us to cast our net to a buying pool that's now globally. It's not just going to be in South Africa. The app is obviously available on Android and on the App Store. It's called the Highspeed Auction Company app. And what's very nice about this app is that all the properties that we're going to have going up for auction will be on the app. And on the day of the auction, the auctioneer's virtual studio actually pops up on the app. So it really does make buying that property just so easy. We will do the virtual tours on the properties. So you as an investor, if it's a property in Polokwane and you down in Durban, before driving all the way up to Polokwane, the virtual tours that we're starting to do now will at least give you that virtual experience of being able to do a walkthrough and have a look at it. Once you are satisfied with the virtual tour and the investor pack that we provide to investors. Now, bear in mind something here too. The due diligence that an investor will perform on a subject property could possibly take 2 to 3 months for them. What we do at the Highspeed Auction Company is we do a lot of due diligence, and the investor packs that we create really cuts down a due diligence period for a buyer, because we answer most questions that they probably would go and look for in that investor pack. So zoning information, rental incomes, etc., etc., etc. So that investor pack really does give them sufficient information to make an informed decision. Is this something I want to take a closer look at? And if so, then go and actually facilitate that viewing for that property. But again, it comes back to this app, because once you are then ready to transact on these auctions, this app is going to be on your phone. You're going to sit, you're going to see the auctioneer in the virtual studio. You're going to see the property behind him. You're going to see who else is bidding on you, whether it's via the app, whether it's telephonically or via Zoom. And you'll be able to just effectively place your bids through this app, though. It really does make life so much easier.
100%, 100%. One of the things that I also like about what you guys do and having some of your investors pack is they're very, very detailed. You don't actually usually find that when you're trying to buy land or when you try to buy commercial buildings that you have, you know what are the leases that are in place, obviously the zoning rights and everything else that is involved in that. So you don't usually find all that information. So I think it is really, really helpful, and I would encourage people to check it out. But I'll also be sending it to all the attendees who attended today. And I see some questions here, and right now we're going to be opening up for Q&A. If you guys have any questions about what is going on, then let's discuss that. So I'm going to start with a question here I see from Monday. It's asking, are they involved in bank repos? How safe is it by a bank repo, and how trustworthy are the pics of the property? Are they not doctored to look good? Oh, okay, I see that. So do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, very good question, actually. So the Highspeed Auction Company does work with the financial institutions, and you'll see that we have a lot of bank instructions or power of attorney properties from the banks that we take to auction. Now, the investor packs that we do and the photos that we will take from a property are actual photos that we ourselves take. Sometimes there might be if you want to call it Photoshop photos on a subject property, because the sellers have those photos professionally taken and then we'll use those. But for most instances, I would say 95% of the times, the photos that we take are actual photos that we've taken ourselves because we have to view the property ourselves. And those photos that we take are actual photos. We try not to doctor them. I think it's very important, and this is why the auction process is so successful, is because we're very transparent. And that's the biggest thing, for you, investor, as a buyer, dealing with a reputable auction company, transparency is of the utmost importance to us. So for you as a buyer, buying a bank instruction property, if you want to, it's always important to read through and request the conditions of sale on each one of those properties, because some properties will have slightly different conditions of sale. But for most part, we will keep the seller responsible, for instance, to settle all arrear rates and taxes and levy accounts, if there are any, on that property. So you as the buyer know that when you buy a property from us at auction, that the seller will settle all arrear rates and taxes. It's unlike sheriff auctions. You've got to be careful with sheriff auctions, because you just need to know how those works, because at a sheriff auction, you as the buyer will be picking up the arrear rates and taxes and levy accounts. So you need to do your due diligence to know what that amount is, because you will have to pay for that. But with our properties, bank instruction properties, we keep the bank reliable to settle all of those arrear rates and taxes and levy accounts.
100%, 100%. And also, I just wanted to add on that before I go into other questions is, virtual tours that I see you guys are doing on the auctions that you had previously, how reliable are those virtual tours, and how much can people rely on that? Couple that with the due diligence that you guys do and investor pack and whatever you guys are doing. So I just want to know that, can somebody literally make a decision to say, okay, I'm happy with the deal, I'm putting in the offer there, and let's move forward with the deal without viewing entirely? Or is viewing going to be required as part of the CPA and all the other things that are going on with that?
That's very interesting, because obviously as auctioneers we sell properties as foot stewards, which means you buy it and as it is. So you as the buyer must do your due diligence. If you think that there might be structural issues, you need to get your structural engineer through there to go and have a look at it, because you're buying that property as foot stewards. Now, when COVID, forced us all going online and having to do the virtual tours, we even had to look and get our attorneys involved to take a look at our conditions of sale to make sure that, now us going virtual, can we still have it as foot stewards? And again, as you say, we do a lot from our side. So the photos that we take on a property, the investor pack that we will create on the property, and the virtual tour that we're going to do on the property should give you as an investor enough to go by to say, with all of that I have here from my desktop, this is enough information for me to make an informed decision. Yes, I can buy this property. Now, we actually sold 2 properties to international buyers that bought the property purely just on the virtual tour that we provided. So I think you will find buyers that will be happy to do that. But I think at the end of the day, especially if you are in South Africa, if you have the means as a last resort to actually still go and view that property, do all your due diligence, take a look at the investor packs that we have, do the virtual walk around, and that should give you enough information to say, yes, I now want to participate in the auction for this property. Let me take a drive through and actually go view that property for myself. I think for me as a buyer, that's what I would like to do. But I think we are going to find a lot more people getting more comfortable to making a transaction just purely on the virtual tour that they've seen from it.
100%, 100%. No, thanks a lot. I think you clarified that question very well. Okay, so we have a question here from Jonathan. He's asking, is this session recorded? Yes, Jonathan, it is recorded. You can find it on my YouTube channel. I'll actually just send you a link here on the answer, just in a few minutes. And then I see a question from anonymous attendee says, could an interested buyer use suspensive clauses on an auction bid? And if so, what types are allowed? So I think you mentioned that there are clauses that can be used, but I think you can answer that question for that.
Sorry, just repeat that question again, Ezra.
Saying, could an interested buyer use suspensive clauses on an auction bid? And if so, what types are allowed? I think he means what conditions can you put as part of your offer to purchase that you're putting on auction?
So unfortunately, there isn't really much of a deviation on our conditions of sale. They are non-suspensive. And this is why sellers go the route of using auctioneers to dispose of their assets, because the conditions that we provide are non-suspensive, meaning you as the buyer need to be ready and able to transact at the levels that you're offering. You cannot submit an offer to us, say, listen, I want to participate at this auction subject to the bank approving my loan, because our conditions are non-suspensive. So you need to know that your bank is going to cover you for that 100 million rand property before you come and transact on it, because on the fall of the hammer, whether it's pre-auction or post-auction or at the auction, we will require a 16.5% deposit to be paid up front. That's made up of a 5% deposit for the purchase price of the property. And remember that you as the buyer pays the additional 10% buyer's premium or auctioneer's commission over and above the purchase price. So just another tip for your listeners out there, remember you as the buyer, whatever you pay for the property at auction, there will be additional auctioneer commission over and above that. But we won't have any suspensive conditions included in our non-suspensive conditions of sale, unless it is for a large tract of development land. And let's say we didn't have a successful transaction at auction. After the auction, you say, look, really interested in this, but we need a bit of a due diligence. We are able to submit an offer based on these conditions. Then we could entertain those. But pre-auction and for auction, unfortunately, it's non-suspensive and it has to stay that way. That's why the sellers prefer going our route, because they know that the offer that we're going to get them might not be what exactly they were hoping and anticipating for, but the offer that we're going to bring them is going to be clean, non-suspensive. So if they accept those offers, they know that guarantees will be due within 30 business days after co-signing that offer to purchase.
100%, 100%. And I also think that's why most investors, including myself, go before and after the auction to check if the deals are still there. Then you can be able to put most of the conditions that you might be having. Okay, so I see a question here from Marcel. Is asking what finance options are offered with regarding to you guys at High Street. Do you have any finance options that you guys are offered that my investors should be knowing about?
Unfortunately not. We do obviously, I'm happy to refer them to some people that has approached me that can help with financing for auction properties. But at the High Street Auction Company, there are many institutions out there that you can go and use to bridge finance and help you to buy properties. But at the High Street Auction Company, we specialize in one thing and one thing only, and that's the sale of properties on auction. So unfortunately, we don't have financing options available, but should they be interested, we can share, but obviously that's on the sideline.
Okay, not a problem. So I will be sure that, just to understand that the finance options you're speaking about are more like bridge financing, or institutional financing. Are there any institutions that you know personally that would finance option properties, except for banks, I should say? Or is there going to be like a lot of private institutions that are going to be doing like a lot of bridge financing, and that is going to be, obviously,
There
repayable
really
on
are
different
many of
types?
them out there. And, some of these guys can be very creative on how to help you as a buyer or investor to help you unlock value out of your existing portfolio. So it is always a good idea, maybe if you've exhausted all of your avenues with your regular financial institutions like the banks, to look at these private venture capitalist guys, because they might be able to unlock more value out of your existing portfolio to help you fund future transactions that you're going to do.
Oh, no, I definitely understand where that comes from. Okay, so I hope we answered that question well, Marcel, but just let us know if your question is well answered. And then Monday is asking again, he's saying, how is the reserved price related to the balance owed on a repo property?
So interesting question there, actually. So, earlier I said that all properties we take to market has a reserve price on it. I should actually just clarify a little bit. I would say 90% of the properties we take to market will have a reserve price on it, because the majority of sellers that we deal with are listed funds, some financial institutions, but mostly private sellers. And for that reason, the reserve prices are on there. However, it does change a little bit if it is a bank instruction property or a liquidation property whereby we've been instructed by the master, the high court, or by the bank to take that property to market. In those instances, we don't really have a reserve price per se. There is a bit of a guideline value that they wish to get to, but there really is no reserve prices. And once we have a successful offer on a bank instruction or liquidation property, those offers then get presented to the banks. Now, let's take an example, for instance. Let's say we had a property here in Eagle Canyon, and it's probably worth in the region of 5 million. And the bank instructs us to take the property to auction. Let's say we only get 2.5 million for that property at auction. It will then be dependent on the banks to go through their panel and get the authorization from all the necessary people on whether they will accept that offer or not. So we never really understand what value it really is that we need to get to. And this is why the banks use us, because they know our option of doing it is going to bring them a true market related value on that property on that day. However, the banks are prepared to usually write off a percentage. What those percentages are, they differ from property to property, but they will be prepared to write off a percentage of debt that's owed to them to get those property transactions off their books so that they can clear their books out of it.
100%. So from what I'm picking up from you, you're saying that, it's much better to just put in the offer on the bank repo property, and the bank will be the ones who respond to say, are they going to be taking the offer or not? Okay, so that sounds good enough. I think there's also another question here from attendee saying, do auctions have any tax benefits?
Well, many, yes. As I said, it depends on whether you're looking from a buyer or a seller's point of view, and it's got benefits for both those parties. I think for most of your attendees listening here, from a buyer's point of view, again, as I said, the biggest benefit for you as a buyer buying at auction is that you are going to be in the driving seat. You are going to determine what values you want to attach to those properties, and you bring those numbers to the auction. If it goes past that, then step away from it and wait for the next deal to come through. But by doing it that way, you as the buyer will be able to buy properties at the numbers and the values that you are prepared to transact at. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits from a buying point of view.
Okay, now I see. Okay, so we have another comment from YouTube now. Ms. Vilil saying, I see lately most auctions are no longer a good idea because they are now selling at a normal house value or a higher reserve price. Sellers are now going the auction route, and the buyers don't know. The buyers don't know they end up buying a property at a higher price when you add the commission, VAT, commission fee and VAT. I'm a property auction addict. Okay, so this is a comment from Vilil on YouTube. Do you have anything to say on that?
Look, and again, as I say, you know, she did bring some interesting points up there, and this is very important for buyers to understand. This is why one of my tips earlier was, if you are going to transact on an auction property, make sure that you get the conditions of sale from the auctioneer so that you can read through it, so that you know what you're going to be in for. Because again, as I said, if you want to come and buy this property or this pen at auction, it's going to cost you your purchase price for it, but then there will be commission added onto it. If it's a VATable transaction, you'll probably have to pay VAT. If you are a VAT vendor, you'll be able to get your accountants, if they can cleverly zero rate that transaction for you, and then the regular transfer duties and transfer costs will be applicable. So all of this needs to be factored in when you, as the investor or as the buyer, determine what value you want to buy or pay for a property. You need to keep these extra costs in mind and then set your numbers for it, you know.
100%, 100%. So basically just saying, do your homework, run your numbers, and stick to the numbers that you are working out for you. You know, you mustn't have that.
And give yourself a 10% sort of leeway. Yeah.
100%, 100%. Now, I think you answered most of the questions, and I hope everybody managed to ask all the questions that we have, that they had. And look, I found this session valuable, and I hope everybody else who attended our session today did find it valuable. If you haven't gotten our ebook, it's also on our Q&A chat, and we also have a course there on our launch price on about how to close your first deal. If you're a good investor who already done that, then that's good for you. But if you're somebody else who's on the entry level, I think you want to take advantage of that. Otherwise, Shawn, thank you a lot for joining us today. I'm not sure I'm seeing as a comment, I have to run for 1 o'clock now. Thanks a lot, Monday, also for attending. And then everybody else who attended today, I hope you guys got a value out of this session. And thank you guys for attending, and I'll see you guys next week.
Cheers, Ezra. Thanks for having us.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.